Benz. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. So let's get right into it. We already spent yesterday me ranting about the Kansas City Chiefs and how I feel like they are not the team that everybody is just willing to concede that they are. Their reputation is that of the current dynasty and the best team in the NFL, but if you actually objectively look at them, they have not played up to that standard at all this year. And I stand on that. What I saw last night, even though I jinxed the Bucs, was the best team in the NFL. I don't care about record. I care about how are you playing, and do you do something, and this is true about all great teams can do something that's pretty much unstoppable. If you look at the great passing teams in NFL history, it's quarterback to a certain receiver combination that, yeah, play whatever defense you want, yeah, have whatever strategy lined up, but you just couldn't truly stop the greats like Tom Brady to Randy Moss, Peyton Manning to Marvin Harrison. These teams that just had something that were so unstoppable. And we have another one that is currently actively playing in the NFL, and that is the Baltimore Ravens and their run game. There is nothing you can do schematically, nothing you can do with a system that just, you cannot stop what is currently Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and this Baltimore run game. So much so that you can say whatever you want about Lamar as the passer. They are so dominant running the ball that you have to overcommit. He creates his own one-on-one situations because you can't double team any receiver on there. If you double team a guy, that means less men in the box, and then Derrick Henry runs on you for 150 yards a game. They are outrunning teams by 150 yards. And oh yeah, by the way, that game last night, Lamar throws for 5 touchdowns to show you he is not only the best dual threat quarterback in the NFL currently, he has an argument to the best dual threat quarterback of all time. And right now, and I know this sounds sacrilegious because Mahomes' resume is the best we've ever seen through 7 years, but right now, Lamar Jackson is the best player in the National Football League, and the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in the National Football League. Again, it does not matter what you scheme up as a defensive coordinator. You cannot scheme up, how do I hit when they block a certain way and Derrick Henry's one-on-one with a linebacker or a safety who just cannot bring him down. And then we see this once again, Derrick Henry just breaks out for this big 60, 70-yard run. That's not normal. That's not something that has ever been sustainable in the NFL. But all-time greats do things that have not been sustainable and or not normal. I just got this before the show started. I want to read this off. Tony sent this. This is rushing leaders since 2018. Top guys. Derrick Henry, 9,885 yards. Derrick Henry after contact, 7,028 yards. Third is Nick Chubb with 6,533. He has more yards after contact than the next closest guy has total yards. There has been 7 games in NFL history where a quarterback has 5 touchdowns and 50 rushing yards. Lamar has 3 of them. There's been 6 games where a quarterback has that many touchdowns, 4 or more, and that many touchdowns as completions. Lamar's got 4 of them. What the Baltimore Ravens are currently doing, yes, their defense, it needs to be better. But here's the thing. Their defense, because we are so used to Baltimore throughout its history, from Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Haloti Ngata, and even last year, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, we're used to them always having this dominant, this just incredible defense. That's a part of their culture. That's a part of the history of the team. You couldn't before this year say Ravens without thinking great defense. But the reality is you play like your best players. There's a reason why you don't see a handful. There's only a handful of teams in NFL history that have had all-time great offenses and all-time great defenses at the same time. You play to your best players. And the Ravens' best players right now, they're on offense. Lamar, Henry, their offensive line. Kyle Hamilton, great player. Roquan Smith, great player. Marlon Humphreys on the downside of his career. They are playing a more fast, electric style of offense, which is weird coming from that franchise. We've never seen it before. It's rare to see, again, you don't see continued stretches of both dominance offensively and defensively. It just does not happen for prolonged periods of times. I go back to Denver, as I do with most things. 2013, most points ever scored in NFL history. Lose the Super Bowl. By 2015, when they win the Super Bowl, the offense was below average at best. The defense was the best in the league. That 2013 team that scored all those points, the defense was below average at best. So these teams, they reflect the way that their best players are. It changes the culture. When your best player is a quarterback versus when your best player is a middle linebacker or a safety, it changes the culture and the nature of the team. But that team right there, again, Tampa gets up 10-0, and this is how you really know, and Tampa's a good team. I said this yesterday. Tampa's a really good team. They have one of the best wins in the NFL this year, going into Detroit, winning that game. And I said this live on air yesterday. If Tampa also were to beat the Ravens, you've got to call Tampa a top 10 team because they would have beaten Baltimore and Detroit. And at the time I said that, it was 10-0. It got out of control. Baltimore scored 20-plus unanswered. Lamar was throwing everywhere, running everywhere. They could do whatever they wanted. And I know the immediate response is, well, they lost to Kansas City in week 1. Look, the game they play, by the time the season really gets into form, most week 1 games, you just got to throw out. I know we're all excited. We waited all offseason for football. We're all like, oh, it's here. Let's go. But the reality is who a team is in week 1 is not who they're going to be in week 10, week 15, come the playoffs. It's just almost never true. So that team that played in week 1, when Lamar and Derrick Henry did not have near the chemistry, it was kind of unfair emotionally because this was the team that had just ended their season the season prior. You're going to their place. You're seeing the banner that they raised up that you feel like you should have had because you feel like you were the better team all last year. There's a lot of factors that went into that week 1 game. But if you ask me right now, play Ravens, Chiefs play, I don't care where they play. In Baltimore, in Kansas City, neutral field, the Baltimore Ravens are the better team. And Lamar Jackson is putting himself in that rarefied air. He is playing like the MVP again. And if he gets 3 of them, we have to start shedding this conversation of dual threat quarterback, which has been unfortunately maligned due to both stylistically and racially. We need to start acknowledging Lamar Jackson, not just as one of the best running quarterbacks ever, not just as one of the best dual threat quarterbacks ever. No, Lamar Jackson is one of the best quarterbacks we have ever seen play in the National Football League. Transitioning from the NFL to a sport that I love, the NBA has a problem, man. The NBA season starts tonight. The NBA's season openers, even baseball, people are over the moon and excited for the beginning of Major League Baseball season. And that's a 162-game season. Game 1 means this much. But you're supposed to be excited for the season openers. And what are we supposed to be excited about? What has been the news cycle around the NBA the last couple of months? Well, LeBron's going to play with his son. That's exciting. We're going to hit some horrible internet takes because of Bronny's debut. Paul George went to a new team, but now he's injured. Joel Embiid, still injured. I don't know when he got injured. He was playing in the Olympics. Now he's going to be out the first week of the season. We should be excited about Wemby, but I didn't hear from him all off season. The NBA, and I think this is across all 4 sports, but I think right now the NBA has a commissioner problem. And that's, these guys are running the league, and the reality is when you let certain stars run the league, And this current era of superstars, not the young guys, but this current era of superstars are used to this load management. That's the term we all popularized. The problem with load management is I think its origins have been totally misconstrued. People used to blame Greg Popovich and say, oh, he had stars missing, sitting out primetime games. They were missing the TNT games. They were missing the ABC games. But that wasn't really a problem because by the time he did that, Tim Duncan was already well over a decade into his career. We had a decade of watching Tim Duncan go play every single night. We had a decade of seeing Parker play. We had a decade of seeing Ginobili play. Some of these guys who are the current superstars, like a Joel Embiid, you are never going to see play a full season. And the international guys don't market themselves. Jokic, once the season is over, he leaves. Wemby, it felt like the same thing. He's one of the biggest up-and-coming superstars in the league, the 7'5" French phenom. We don't hear from him. I didn't hear from the SGA. Like, these international guys don't care to be in the media the way the American stars prior to them wanted to be. And so they've been given all the power, they've been given all the fame, and they just walk away. They don't promote themselves. If you give anyone responsibility, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Because the naturally responsible people, when the NBA basically handed over its marketing to Mike, it was perfect because Mike was a personality. The shoe deal, when they gave it to Shaq was this huge personality. When Kobe had it, when LeBron had it, these guys almost self-marketed themselves. The NBA does not market its current stars. It definitely doesn't market its future stars. And the international guys just don't care. So we're starting an NBA season, and what do we got? More injured stars. The Warriors, it's just Steph. I got the Mavericks the Mavericks just made the finals, had one of their best seasons in a decade. I didn't hear anything or see anything about Luke all offseason. I didn't hear or see anything about Kyrie all offseason. The Celtics won a title. I talked about this a few weeks ago. They're one of the things who are the most least talked about sports topics, and they're the defending NBA champions. I love basketball. I love the NBA. But you cannot, your season opener, there's a handful of things that people should just naturally be excited for. And your season opener is one of them. I remember being beyond excited, coming home from school, seeing guys walking down the tunnel for the first time on TNT. And it's only going to get worse because as they transition, there is far more international stars who aren't going to just magically flick this switch and start going, oh, I want to be in the media. I want to be in the front page. We're losing inside the NBA, which, however you feel about them, you can't deny their impact on the media part of the game and the importance of it. Like, the stars that we've relied on, the NBA has relied on for years, LeBron, KD, Steph, these guys are transitioning out. Again, Giannis leaves once the season's over. Jokic leaves once the season's over. Luka leaves once the season's over. Like, you know what the NBA has done? You know what the most marketed thing we've seen with the NBA is? We just got the Ant Edwards and Justin Jefferson recreating the iconic photo from KG and Randy Moss. Like, I love the NBA, but I'm going to be fair. I give baseball a lot of shit for not being able to market its stars despite how much talent exists currently in Major League Baseball. And that same thing needs to apply to the NBA. You have all this talent, and was the NBA just that dependent on LeBron? Was it just that dependent on Steph? You got to transition. The good leagues do. The NFL, this is why the NFL, even though the NFL, you could argue its product, no one wants to hear this, but the NFL's product, you could argue, is as bad as it's been in a while. And they're still going to do numbers, and they're still king of the sports world because they move on, they market, they promote the next guy. Tom Brady retires, boom, we move on. Peyton Manning retires, boom, we move on. Aaron Rodgers is no longer good, don't worry, we got CJ Stroud. They are always ready for the next guy. The NBA has failed to do this. Man, I'm fired up today. When we come back, the other Monday night game was the Chargers and the Cardinals. And I'll be honest with you, I heard a lot of Charger fans. I live in San Diego. A lot of Charger fans complaining. And in my mind, why are we complaining? This is the team Jim Harbaugh wanted. Also, Tony is going to stop by. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. I don't care if the Vikings are 5-0. This is a 1,000% to me. This is a coaching story. This is Kevin O'Connell. This is Brian Flores. This is a really cool story for Sam Darnold, but it's still Sam Darnold. And I'm just not willing to put them much higher than this because I think the 7th best team in the NFL is probably your cap with Sam Darnold. Now, that's still incredible. Everything they've done to Minnesota this year has been absolutely, without question, incredible. But it's Sam Darnold. And I don't care if the Vikings are. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate you guys for tuning in with me today. So the other Monday Night Football game from last night, we discussed the Ravens and how I feel about them. The other game was the Chargers and the Cardinals. And I live in a place where there's a lot of Charger fans, and even though they moved to LA. And so I heard a lot of people today complaining about no receiver, no help for Herbert. I also saw, I watched a lot of sports media, obviously. Heard a lot of sports media members complaining and saying, oh, Herbert has no help. Look what he's doing. Can we be fair about Justin Herbert? I don't deny that Justin Herbert is a great player. I think he has an incredible arm talent. I don't really know intangibles, but I'll just say he's got good ones because I don't think he has bad intangibles per se. But he's clearly a great player and, if nothing else, a great talent. Mobile, arm, can do everything, right? Right size, right height, all that stuff. But to talk about, oh, well, he doesn't have the talent. Yes, he does. It's just not where you would theoretically want it with a quarterback like him because of his head coach, Jim Harbaugh. But we knew this would be an awkward fit. Everybody just assumed, great, put it together, it's going to be fine. Put great talent Justin Herbert with great head coach Jim Harbaugh. Boom, we got it. We're going to roll. Jim Harbaugh wants to run the ball 30-plus times a game, be a dominant defense, be a tough physical football team. He could give a rip if his quarterback throws 5 times a game. Look at J.J. McCarthy last year. Top 10 or top 11 NFL pick, could give a rip if he threw it 10 times a game. So what makes Herbert, outside of the fans and media, think he's better than that and that he should get the ball more? Why do we think that, it would be any different considering who his head coach is? Who did they draft? An offensive lineman. There was a tight end available, receivers available, skill position guys, and Jim Harbaugh said, I want an offensive tackle. I want to be a power running football team. And everybody ignored it when they get off to a 2-0 start. Everybody said, cool, it's working. They're now 3-3. Lost 3 of the last 4. And we're just am I supposed to feel bad for Herbert? I could have seen this coming. Anyone could have. Just be honest. It's not like Kyler Murray, who Arizona said, hey, look, no one feels bad for him because Arizona said we want to invest in him, so they got him Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's with a defensive coach. This is why general managers and head coaches, while they need to be on the same page, they also have to understand we need to help. The bottom line is helping our players, not just helping ourselves. Jim Harbaugh is building a team in his image, and the reality is the team in his image doesn't need Justin Herbert. It needs offensive linemen, needs defensive linemen, needs tough, big, physical guys, run the ball a bunch, play great defense. Jonathan Gannon also probably wants more defensive players or more offensive linemen, but they got Kyler Murray, who they know they needed because they've invested so much into him. They know they need him to succeed, so they got him Marvin Harrison Jr., who you can say what you want about how he played last night. They went and got him a skill position offensive piece to help him. The Chargers so far have been building a team to help their head coach, not their quarterback. So no, I don't feel bad for Herbert. And yes, is it impressive to throw for 349 yards with those receivers? Yeah. But a lot of quarterbacks would tell you, once you're paid, you're going to miss something. The Chiefs pay Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't really have an offensive line. and really doesn't even have receivers consistently at this point besides Kelsey. The Niners are, if they're deciding to pay Brock Purdy, well, then they're gonna start having to peel back some of these all pros they have. Arizona paid Kyler Murray, they can't keep everybody. The Jaguars paid Trevor Lawrence, which looks right now like a really bad deal. They're gonna start losing some guys. The high-end paid quarterbacks either have a great offensive line, which Herbert will have, because he's got 2 great tackles and some good interior linemen, or they have great weapons. Joe Burrow's perfect case. Got paid a lot. He's got great skill position receivers. Offensive line, not so great. So I don't feel bad for Herbert. And the reality is, we all could have seen this coming. This is who the Chargers wanted to be. They didn't want to be some multiple skill position, great receivers everywhere. They wanted to be the tough physical football team the way their head coach wants them. That's who they made the team for. They made the team for their head coach, not their quarterback. So when you're wondering why he's throwing to Will Disley or a McConkey or multiple tight end sets, that's what Jim Harbaugh wants. Jim Harbaugh wants the physical. He wants the tough. He wants defense. He wants offensive linemen. This is the team in his image. And I guarantee that was spoken about when he got the job. It just so happened he had a quarterback that we view as either a great quarterback or at the very least a great talent. And yeah, Justin Herbert, throughout the time that Jim Harbaugh's head coach there, is going to feel underutilized, is going to feel like he doesn't have great weapons, because that's not the team Jim wants. That shouldn't come off as a surprise to anybody. Just my opinion. And with that, we are joined by the richest man y'all will never meet. Tony, how we doing today?
I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm doing good. I felt bad. I did a live check-in on the Bucks Ravens game yesterday, and I said, and I've had Tampa kind of between either unranked or like at 10 and 9 in my power rankings, and that's because I think they have one of the most impressive wins, which is going into Detroit and winning that game. I think that was a super impressive win, and I told myself when they got up 10-0, I'm like, if they get wins on Baltimore and Detroit, like they got to be in the top 10 teams in the NFL. And Baker, if you look at the way he's been playing, and then all that went to shit because Ravens went on like a 24-0 run right afterwards. It was some of the most live jinx shit I've ever done to myself or to another team. So sorry, Bucks fans. I have 2 questions for you to start. Obviously, the Ravens dominated again yesterday, won 5 straight. Shout out to all the 0-2 people. If 2 things. Yesterday I went on like a little mini rant and I said, I understand the reputation of Kansas City and that means something. You can't take away what they've already done. 3 titles in 4 years, impressive as hell. I no longer think they're the best team in the NFL, and I don't think that's no longer a controversial take if you're willing to take out reputation, especially because at some point everyone stops being that. Tom and Bill were that for years. You go to other sports league, Shaq and Kobe, Duncan and the Spurs, but at some point you stop being that team.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think right now the most dominant team rolling is the Ravens? So I'll ask you honestly as a fan, do you think the Ravens have overtaken Kansas City as the best team in football? Or if potentially think it's another thing? And I'll save the second question. I want to hear this one first. I got another one though.
I don't think they're the most. I think they're the best. I don't think they're the most dominant team. I don't think there's any dominant team in the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot they have to clean up and get better at, and I think they will. But to that question, I definitely think they're the best team in the league. And obviously, you got your Detroits that can debate that. Minnesota's up to Sunday, they could have debated that. You still have a few other teams that can debate them. Well, not really a lot, but Kansas City for sure. They're undefeated at the end of the day, and but Pittsburgh, they can make their claim if they choose to do such, but I trust the Ravens against any other 31 team. So yeah.
No, I feel it. And I thought this about Lamar is, and I think this is a unique franchise to work with. There's a handful of franchises. If you start looking at like the all-time greatest players, I'm talking about the dudes who are the greatest ever at their position, they're really only between 7 or 8 franchises. And Baltimore has two of them. There's a really strong argument. Ray Lewis is the greatest middle linebacker we've ever seen. And Ed Reed, while in real time I thought it was a debate, I think we've a couple years removed now. He's won the safety argument over Polamalu and even Ronnie Lott to go back to the 80s. Do you feel like the way Lamar is playing now with the potential to get his third MVP, which is some real rarefied air in NFL history, do you feel like as a fan, someone who's watched Ray Lewis, someone who's watched Ed Reed, and you can really like, we all can see great players, and the Ravens had plenty of great players, but those guys stand out even amongst great players. Do you feel like Lamar is ascending to that point where at some point in time, he's going to be in that conversation the same way Ray is for linebackers and Ed is for safeties?
As will he be that for quarterback?
Correct.
Yeah. For the third MVP, I put him right there to TBH. So I mean,
no, I agree.
Yeah, he's, in my opinion, he's a Hall of Famer now. Look at the two MVPs, you look at the accolades and everything he's done outside of winning the Super Bowl. Is like there's nothing else for him to do but win a championship, and I do think that's on the way very soon. But yeah, he's incredible, and when you look at everything he's been able to do up to this point, being he doesn't turn 28 till January, so
that's insane. Still, his age is crazy.
So he's a month older than me. So it's like he's there's no reason he won't put himself in that space where you can say, this is one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played the game. And, similar to Ed and similar to Ray, it's cultivating a city, it's cultivating a play style, and it really defines an era of football. When you look at how Ed and Ray played, it defined an era of football that was hard hitting, that was fast, that was relentless, it was unforgiving. When you look at Lamar's style of play, it represents an era that's fast, it's high scoring, it's pretty, it's things we have never seen before from the quarterback position, and we're getting that on a weekly basis from a lot of different guys. So for him to kind of be at the top of that mountain with Mahomes, it's crazy to see, but it's definitely dope to see.
No, it's so interesting too, because dual threat quarterbacks, both stylistically and racially, unfortunately, have always been judged differently. And I think when people first started Lamar's first MVP season, and because there's not a lot of them prior to him coming into the league, it was like, okay, where does he rank among dual threat quarterbacks? And we really only ever had Mike and Cam to be at like that high of a level where they could be, you could argue they were the MVP of the league, or in Cam's position, he was the MVP of the league. Now, I think Lamar's legacy is going to actually get even better, because he is the best dual threat quarterback in an era where there's a legitimate amount of dual threat quarterbacks. Like you have, Josh Allen, you've got new guys, Jaden Daniels, like there is dual threat quarterbacks across the league. Now you have to be able to run almost from the quarterback position. We only have, you take out Stafford and Burrow, they're probably the only two total like statuesque kind of elite quarterbacks that we consider. So I think Lamar's reputation is going to keep going through the roof. Let's get into it. So I do want to talk some baseball with you, because obviously the World Series is coming up and we about to watch the hell out of it. I'm not gonna say we could argue about if it was a foul or not. I think there was a lot of good things that came from the WNBA finals. Now, as someone who is more of a relatively new fan, I think the little bit of the controversy that had come from it, I think overall will help. And I think in most sports leagues, you could go year in, year out, look at any team that won a title and say, oh, this foul here or this non-call here. Like there's those throughout history, but we don't really look at them in the grand scheme of things. Like we call Tom a 7-time Super Bowl champion and pretty much have totally forgotten the tuck rule, which was mind blowing at the time when it happened. So takeaways from not just the WNBA finals, but as someone who's been a fan of the league for a few years now, like this had to be the most exciting season in WNBA history as far as their expansion. I know they just dropped out of the CBA agreement, so they're going to go renegotiate for more money because the views are up. They have more people tuning in, which is great because now the players are going to be able to make more money. What was your takeaway from the finals and just this season as a whole?
The season as a whole, season as a whole from a play standpoint, I thought it was good. Obviously, it can always improve. And I think that'll just continue to happen with more skilled women coming in. And I say when I say skilled women, I don't mean that the women that have been a part of the W aren't as skilled, but even you see this on the men's side. Is just a different level when you have all these different resources to work on your game and to develop different things that just wasn't available 15, 20 years ago, even 10 really. And when you look at just the next group of athletes that's come out, that's men or women, they're just able to do different things because they have more resources. So when
1,000%.
you look at the women's side of things, the game will just continue to get better from an on-court standpoint. And you have young players, obviously, in the league now that'll only get better, having been in this professional setting, having had, that experience under their belt. Angel Reese will be better next year. Caitlin Clark will be better next year. Camila Cardoza will be better next year. Rakia Jackson will be better. Cam Brink will be back healthy from her ACL injury. She'll be better. Like these players that we're speaking of that from this current crop will get better. Then the players before them will take another leap. Aaliyah Boston will, in my opinion, be right there in MVP talks next year. Just that can go on and on. It's the league's only going to improve based on where we're at. And
Paige and Juju on the way.
And you have generational talents on the way, and Paige and Juju and everybody else behind that. Not to mention, Flage and just a whole nother batch of really good women players that are coming. So I thought on the court it was great. Obviously dealt with a lot of bullshit off the court, but it also opened up room to really hear the opinions of those that do love the W, that do watch the W. It opened up more for just a lot of different platforms to be able to offer valid and smart and educated opinions on the game, and that's always helpful. The finals I thought was really good. Obviously, I thought the finals was important. I thought finals like this was needed. The two best teams in the league going at it for the title. I thought the outcome was very fishy. I thought Game 5 was officiated very funny, but
it could have been. It might have been.
But it was what it was. Politics in any sport will exist, so you take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, the W's got a bright future ahead of it. You just hope that it doesn't get caught up in the politics of sport. It's always kind of been able to operate in its own little bubble and make its own progress slowly. But with all the eyes on it and the funds that are now coming into it, you kind of got to speed that up a little bit more. And you just hope that it's not to the detriment of the game itself. The business part doesn't, fuck with the on-court stuff. The W needs a new commissioner, but, Kathy can make claim to all of this success under her belt, so I don't see that coming any sooner. But I think the W needs the commissioner that's looking out for the league and the women also. I don't know if they have that necessarily, but it's a bright future here for the W for sure.
No, I agree. And and again went to the controversial point, whether it's a foul or not. Again, you go throughout all sports history and talk about, like, oh, this team shouldn't have done this team shouldn't have done that. I was, though, like, man, to be an athlete is crazy, because Sabrina hit the shot of her life in Game 3. Like, that step back logo shot was like, that was supposed to be like her moment. And then, man, Game 4 was rough, and Game 5 was just, unfortunately, it was just awful performance by her, unfortunately. Obviously, the rest of her teammates stood up, picked up.
She was dog shit, and
she was 1,000%.
She was terrible, and it's another thing that Cheryl Reeve, she was pissed in the post game, and I get it, because that does not happen where their star can be this bad and they're still in the game. Not because everyone else around her is just out of their mind, because that wasn't the case. They they were able to be in that game because the whistle favored them. And when you're the Lynx, if it's a situation of, it's been tight the whole time and, refs not letting a lot of things go, you can respect that. You
Mhm.
can get that as competitors. Cheryl Reeve is a 4-time champion. She's coached some of the greatest WNBA teams of all time. Some of the greatest players of all time. Pound for pound, the GOAT in Maya Moore. She knows how this works. She's won finals, she's lost finals. But with that game 5, for the Lynx not to attempt a free throw in the first half, with their best player being the best post player this season in Nafisa Collier,
That's what I get it.
it's just I the foul on
Stewie.
the foul on Stewie at the end of the game from Carson, that's like, that can piss you off because it's something that you just don't call as a ref. And it's not even as if it's like, okay, she tapped her or she got under her and didn't give her landing space. To call a legal guarding position in that spot, to make the call, number one, you pissing everybody off. Number two, to say that is like, okay, what are we really doing here? So it's like, congratulations to the Liberty for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Salute to Stewie. I have nothing but respect for Stewie because her resume is incredible and she's a great player.
Oh, her resume
But
is, you just do
but
resume. Maya's the better player in my opinion. If you just go like, just because there is something to like the way, like when you really break it down, I think basketball, this with almost more than any other sport, is like stats are one thing, but then there's also like when you can see true skill expression on the court, I think Maya is better, but Stewie's built, her resume is fucking crazy. When you go college to now, and I'm not even talking about, and I'm sure high school is crazy too, like that's a hell of a resume to put up against anybody, any sport. Like Stewie's resume is fucking crazy. In
but
game 5, might have been officiated a little funny,
but before we get to baseball, like I said, it was a great series,
Mhm.
but you just don't want it to end that way.
I
It
agree.
can't end that way, really. But I do think that they'll be able to take that and shift it to next season, when you would assume the Liberty are going to be prohibitive favorites to repeat, but the league is only going to get better. It is only going to get better, and I think it's heading up for sure.
Yeah. And to be fair, just because I said this the other day too, it's probably good because sports need storylines. That's the way it does, because the more you're talked about, the more media, the more eyes, all that stuff does. While it might be annoying to a certain degree, they've been so underpaid for so long. This is going to be able to put more money in everyone's pockets. Similar to the Caitlyn effect of, yes, there's more eyes, I think there's more money to be made. And having a controversial champion, which, that's going to be on the asterisk of like, oh, how last season ended, that kind of thing is good. Like having the aces, can they bounce back after, they got back-to-back titles and they got bounced. They're trying to win 3 out of 4 years still. The Liberty being the quote unquote controversial champion, Caitlyn and Angel in their second year. Like the more and more of these storylines for people like me, people on ESPN, FS1, the more you're talked about for the current situation of the WNBA is a good position for them to be in. Um, Hopefully we don't devolve women's basketball talk to the degree we've devolved men's basketball talk. But I did want to say that I had a question for you about men's basketball before we get to baseball real quick. Is so Joel Embiid, I don't even know when he got hurt because he played in the Olympics. He literally played in the Olympics more than Jason Tatum. And then Shams puts out the tweet today, says, oh, well, Paul George, we all saw him hyperextend his knee. That's just bad luck. Sucks. But it's like, oh, Joel Embiid, who last week announced, hey, I'm never playing back-to-backs again. And then now it's like, oh, well, I'm out the first week of the season. I think the NBA's current problem, and I do genuinely feel this as a fan, is people still have to buy tickets, go to these games. And when you have guys who have never played consistently, like people blame, I'm old enough to remember when people started blaming Pop for like sitting out guys on national TV. We had a decade plus of seeing Tim Duncan play every single game, or pretty much every single game, barring an injury. We had a decade of seeing Parker Ginobili. Some of these guys we've just genuinely never seen play consistently. And I do think it does get frustrating as a fan where if Joel Embiid is your favorite player, it's like, bro, you got 50 games a season if you're lucky. And then he's just telling you, all right, look, I ain't even playing back to backs. And you already know he's injury prone. With some of that, I don't want to totally hold against him. It's just this is a large human trying to move. Like, I think this is one of the least interested I've seen people as far as playing uh the least excited I've seen people for the start of an NBA season. Obviously, tonight's gonna be banner night for the Celtics. They just won a title, so I'm sure you're excited. But do you feel the fact that a lot of these players, like Kawhi now, it's like, all right, he's out again. Joel Embiid's not playing. Like, so many of these guys are missing time. Do you think that is a fair reason that it feels less excited for the NBA season than normal?
It's not exciting because it's not exciting because they haven't. Number one, the league hasn't done a great job of pushing newer stars to the forefront in a way that they should. And everyone
Mhm.
knows the Lakers suck, so it's like you can't really get excited for LeBron's season. Um, Other than just watching him still be great at this age, but like that doesn't translate to later in the season, which
Mhm.
what basketball has turned into, just the playoffs and the big fucking games.
That's it. Tell me about
Um,
it.
so I don't think guys like that are a reason why it's not as much excitement heading into the season. Another thing is you have the team that's prohibited to win the title is the Celtics. They're not they don't play in a way that's Steph Curry and the Warriors to where it's like they're this new brand of basketball that we've never seen. They
Mhm.
don't have players that you necessarily like hate in a way that you did when Durant went to the Warriors and shit like that. Like Jason Tatum gets Twitter hate, but like that doesn't equate to like real life shit. Like
Mhm.
Durant hate, LeBron hate that equated to real life hate and views and it equal to real life disdain from people. The
That's
Jason
facts.
Tatum shit is from news pages on Twitter or Centel pages on Twitter. Like it doesn't matter in real life. Um, so yeah, the lack of excitement is just from this should have been a big summer promoting Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Jokic, Giannis. Becoming taking Giannis kind of replacing LeBron and KD and Steph being more the elder guy now amongst all of these younger guys. Shea should have been everywhere this summer. Wemby should have been everywhere this summer, and they didn't do that. They thought the Olympics would do it for them, and it don't really work that way. The Olympics is promoting the Olympics, not the NBA.
Mhm.
And when you're not promoting in the way that they should, when you're still leaning on guys that are 35, 36 years old plus to carry your league, you end up in a spot like this where it's opening night, Celtics getting their rings right now, and there's not a buzz.
Nah, I totally agree. Um, yeah, no, it's insane. World Series starts Friday. Hate watching Dodgers, Yankees. Well, specifically the Yankees side. Um, I don't want to say this in a negative because I think baseball's had a great postseason. I think the Mets have been fun. I think the Guardians run was cool. Like, there's been a lot of like just great baseball that's been happening over the last couple of weeks. I do think though, and let me know if you agree, this has to be like numbers wise, they got to knock it out the park with this World Series. If you can't do numbers in Major League Baseball with Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, the Dodgers, the Yankees, like if this isn't one of the highest rated World Series since I'm gonna go Cardinals Rangers is one of the ones that like are huge, obviously, as far as world perspective. I know you probably would say the Red Sox one's in there. Like baseball has to do numbers with this World Series, right? Like you can't not take advantage of this many stars, these brands, that kind of shit.
They have to and they won't. They have to and they won't. This World Series will get relatively larger numbers than the past few, but this is a and obviously like streaming plays a part in this and blah blah
Mhm.
blah and just people's general disdain for watching like shit on TV. But um it's not going to do the numbers it should. This should be 15 million, 20 million people watching. This should do close to NBA Finals numbers. It's not going to do Super Bowl numbers, obviously,
Yeah,
but it
that's
should
in its
do
class
like
by itself.
it should do like a big NBA Finals number, and it won't. And that's on baseball. That's not on the people or the players. That's on baseball.
Do you and I think so I think what's going to make this like crushing is if they can't do numbers. So Shohei's not only obviously the best player in the sport and he's great, he has a country behind him. Like anybody that grew up watching basketball in the 2000s, Yao Ming was the number one all-star vote getter every single year that he was just eligible. Like Yao got hurt in the first half of a season. That was like the first time we saw like Japan just still just vote or China just voted him in. And they're like, when you have a country behind you, and if you still can't do numbers in your Major League Baseball, like, man, look, I'm scared because I think you're right, but at the same time, like if baseball can't do this, then we have a huge problem. I There's a deeper story we'll get into later, but there's a commissioner problem across all sports right now. Um, and so yeah, but always good talking to you, man. We'll see you next week. Appreciate you for stopping by.
Of course, man. Thank you.
prime time standalone games. And while the London games are a little weird because they're not quite as prime time because not everybody gets up that early, especially for on the West Coast. It's up at 6:30 in the morning. So it's not quite as big as a Sunday night football, a Monday night football, these other primetime games. Unless you happen to coach for the one team whose owner is an ambassador overseas for the NFL, and your team comes out and looks, while the final score may not be indicative of it, did not play well, your quarterback looks old, threw 3 interceptions, and while your defense did actually do a pretty good job against the Minnesota Vikings, not winning that game, again, when your owner is the ambassador for the NFL overseas, you're Robert Saleh, that's the kind of game that gets you fired. Speaking of coaches that got fired, how did Dennis Allen not get fired? That was one of my just surefire predictions. I was like, the Broncos are going to go play the Saints last Thursday, embarrass them in New Orleans. And not only did Dennis Allen not get fired, the Saints just re-signed Alvin Kamara for 2 years. And it's like, the Saints are one of the weirdest. I don't know what's going on there. I just don't know what's going on there. They're in cap hell. One of the few guys they can actually trade to help relieve some of the cap hell is Kamara. I think it's Kamara and Lattimore, the two guys that you could actually get rid of and it would benefit you on the cap wise. And they re-signed Kamara, and Dennis Allen's still their head coach. It's weird, man. Glad I'm not a Saints fan. With that being said, welcome into Team Tuesday. This is the part of the show for those of you that if you don't care about any teams I root for, I'd read straight up. I encourage you to skip it because I enjoy talking about my teams, and that's what I'm going to do. Speaking of that first team, the team that embarrassed the Saints, that would be the Denver Broncos. I had to hear all offseason about how much Bo Nix sucks, the roster sucks, all this stuff. PFF rated him 32nd. They said the defense. Let me be very clear here. Everything that the world tried to tell you about the Denver Broncos was just wrong. PFF told you their defensive line was awful. Zach Allen currently leads the NFL in pressures. They said their secondary was just okay besides Surtain. Have you seen the coverage statistics of what Surtain, McMillan, and Riley Moss have done, and PJ Locke, who's a top 10 safety according to PFF, and Jonathan Jones, who I think is right outside the top 10? Their offensive line's not very good either. Have you seen their pass blocking rates? Have you seen Garrett Bowles? I think he's only behind Ronnie Stanley and Trent Williams in terms of fewest pressures allowed. He's had another game allowing 2 or fewer pressures, no sacks. The way that Mike McGlinchey genuinely did struggle to start the season. He played good last game against the Saints. And Alex Pazetsky in his place, the way he played, both Powers and Miners on the inside, even at center, which would have been the one position I said they weren't confident in, has still even played exceptional. Receivers, it's been kind of a so-so. Cortland can still make a great catch, but there is some reality to the receiver room is limited, and tight end's probably the worst position group across the board. At running back, even though there's been some fumbles that you don't love, Javonte has played good in now a handful of back-to-back games. Estime, unfortunately, has been injured, so we haven't gotten to see him really. McLaughlin has shown some bursts. And at quarterback, by the way, Bo Nix, who all I was told was how much of a bum he was, how he's not this, how he's not that. Does he make about 1 or 2 plays a game that makes you scratch your head and go, wow? Like the throw that everybody wanted to highlight in New Orleans where he missed the 2 wide open receivers. Yes, he does that. Once or twice a game, he just has a horrible play. He's a rookie quarterback. I have different expectations of a rookie quarterback, I guess. And so, but Bo has played well. They're 4-3. They're about to beat the Panthers. The Denver Broncos are almost 10-point favorites in 2024. Think about that. The Denver Broncos are almost 10-point favorites in 2024. When was the last time you got to say that? 2015, 2016? Almost 10-point. And it's crazy because the line started at 7.5. It's now up to 9.5, meaning more and more people are betting. They saw Denver 7.5. They said free money. They said Denver 7.5 free money. Look, and I keep saying this, the Broncos are the team that they're going to go from they were bad to now they're good, and they're going to be great way faster than anybody's ready for because of the amount of cap space that they have with the richest owners in sports, and you're going to find out this year who can play. And you're going to find out Nick Bonita's got a sack in 5 straight games. He's probably going to be re-signed. Zach Allen's obviously there. He's already on a 4-year deal. Mick Moss is on a rookie deal. Like, they're going to have money to pay these guys. Some guys are going to walk, and that's fine. They're only going to pay for the guys they really want to pay. Garrett Bowles, if they decide to keep him, which right now I would say yes, but I can understand if they feel like they can get potentially some either better market rate and or if they just feel like another star tackle is available. But I like Garrett. He's been there his whole career. And let's not forget, this is year 1.5 of Sean Payton. When you're a great coach, and I mean a great coach, this stuff keeps getting better. It doesn't just stop. Andy Reid is constantly evolving what the Chiefs are doing. Sean Payton, when he was in New Orleans, constantly evolved what New Orleans was doing. New Orleans was a total air-it-out team. Then they started becoming more of a physical team. Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, some Reggie Bush in there in the early years. Like, he modified what he did. Belichick with the Patriots. Like, the great head coaches, Jim Harbaugh, who's in San Francisco, they keep working this, meaning this isn't even the finished product or the final product. Denver's going to have a chance in the offseason to go get a tight end, to go get a T. Higgins, to go get they're probably going to re-sign Nick Bonito the way he's been playing. Like, they're going to go from good to great much quicker than people are ready for. They're going to have a lot of cap space. It's a really young roster. You've already got what a lot of teams just flat out don't have. A lot of teams don't have one good corner. Denver has 3. A lot of teams don't have a good pass rusher. Denver has 3. A lot of teams don't have 2 good offensive linemen. Denver has 4. A lot of teams don't have running backs. You could debate Javonte and McLaughlin. I don't know how high the world per se sees them, but they've been making plays, and you're going to have Estime who's going to get some shine, who's going to get some reps, and you're going to see him coming to, like, this is a team that is secretly ready to go. And as you see these other teams around the league, they're going to have to start letting guys go maybe a few years earlier than they want because they're going to have roster control. What happens if San Francisco has to get rid of 2 or 3 guys because they're paying Purdy $60 million a year or $55 million a year? Does a George Kittle make sense in Denver? Of course he does, even if he's towards the end of his career. A George Kittle right now would be a huge upgrade for the Broncos. What if they get rid of the 49ers, get rid of Deebo Samuel? He'd be a huge improvement in Denver. Again, the receiver room is basically Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin's young, Lavelle. Like, there's a lot here to improve on with Denver because of their ownership and their cap situation. And again, if you believe in Sean Payton and what he's done over this year and a half, and you have to believe that it's only going to continue and get better, Denver's going to be one of the best teams in the NFL in what? Next year, like, if they get to 9-10 wins this year, how great are they going to be next year when they get to improve the receiver room, they get to improve the tight end position, they get another guy on defense. They get if they're not convinced with one of their running backs, they just go out and get, either a star running back in the first round if you get the guy out of Boise State, or if you just go, you pay for someone like a Nick Chubb and see how he bounces back from injury. Like, they're going to be in a great position going forward. Coaching, ownership, quarterback. And again, Nix makes a couple of plays a game that you hope he works out by year 2, year 3. But so far, the athleticism is better. You can still see the accuracy. There's a little bit of his footwork that I would argue is probably his worst, the worst thing he does right now. He does have happy feet at times. But when he settles in, he's decisive. Sean Payton is drawing up an offense that is unique to him. When did you ever see Sean Payton run RPOs? Like, he brought in Taysom Hill towards the end of his time in New Orleans, But Sean Payton has full-blown RPOs for his quarterback, designed runs for his QB. He is taking advantage of the skill set that Bo Nix has, and that's only going to improve, and that's only going to get better as time goes on. Another team that I'm just spoiled with talent. The teams I root for are just spoiled with talent. The New Orleans Pelicans signed Trey Murphy to 4 years, $112 million. I love this signing. I really enjoy right now that the culture in New Orleans is if you play well, if we draft you, you play well, you get paid. This is huge across all sports, and all fan bases want to see this, and all players want to see this. If I play well for this organization, I know I'm going to get paid. I don't have to worry about moving my family. I don't have to worry about relocating. Yes, everybody wants to get the bag, and it's, if another team offers it to you, great, you're going to take the money because it's all life. It's not just life-changing, it's generational wealth. But if I could get that same amount of money, or it's $1 million or $2 million off, and I get to stay where I'm at, where I've established a life, where my family's established, that's just a really nice convenience, and that's something that players take into consideration when they're going to a new team. You think DeJounte Murray's not looking at that and go, okay, if I play the end of this contract well, New Orleans, they're going to give me another one. Jose Alvarado has signed 2 contracts. B.I. got paid the first time. We'll see what happens coming around here, but I do have confidence that he will get paid. Trey Murphy drafted, got paid. Zion drafted, got paid. Like, this is a now routine. This is a team that has a culture and a core. Willie Green is their head coach. Zion, Trey, B.I., yeah, it's going to be weird positionally because they pretty much have 5 essentially wings / semi-power forward in Zion Williamson. But the talent is there. The culture is there. The core group of guys are there. Like, this is just that. Man, I could go on and on with this. And what I love about Trey is the perfect guy to sign right now because between I think CJ is the odd man out, and I do hope, I love what CJ did for New Orleans when he first got there a few years ago. I absolutely believe he was a spark. He helped change the culture. He put them on a faster trajectory to get to really good quicker. But if I have 5 guys I'm building around, I'm taking DeJounte, I'm taking Herb Jones, I am taking Trey Murphy, I'm taking Brandon Ingram, and I'm taking Zion Williamson, which means CJ McCollum, I'm sorry, I know you're making a lot of money right now, but you won't be here for the end of your career most likely if you decide to keep playing. Appreciate the time and everything you've done in New Orleans, but it's time to separate. And I hope that is the direction they go. I will be increasingly sad and disappointed if they choose CJ McCollum over Brandon Ingram. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Those 5 guys, you get them locked up. That's the core of your team with a Jose Alvarado who comes off the bench. And that's including, you still have Jordan Hawkins, who's an established shooter. Now, financially, it's going to be tough to make all 7 of those guys work. But if you get those 5 guys as your core, you have Jose Alvarado coming off the bench. You draft well at all, which this team has been drafting well the last several years. That's an organization that can go somewhere. They've added some free agents, obviously, but that's what the Boston Celtics look like. Some drafted stars. They brought in a couple guys through free agency, but those 5 guys and a couple of guys off the bench, and guess what the Celtics just did? Well, they're celebrating a banner literally as we speak. So, again, for this year, this is probably as talented as you're ever going to be. Because you have those 5 guys that I just mentioned, plus CJ, plus Jordan Hawkins, plus Jose Alvarado, plus we'll see what Yves Missy becomes. Right now he's probably a little too skinny, but that is a potential future center when the small ball lineup is not going to work against certain teams. It's not going to work against a Denver with Jokic. It's not going to work against a Philly with Embiid. It's probably going to be hard to pull off against Milwaukee with Giannis. But you have as much talent as you're ever going to have, and if Zion is really the guy, it's got to be this year. It's got to be this year because this is as talented as you're ever going to be. You're probably going to lose CJ or potentially lose BI. I'm not hoping for the latter. You're not going to probably have as much depth as you're ever going to currently have. Like, if you're Zion Williamson, You think you can be one of the best players in the NBA. Now is the time to prove it. Now is the time to go out there and dominate. Now is the time to go be that face of the franchise type player that they brought you into, that the excitement has been around in the city since you were drafted. Go do it. Go be a great player. Go get you 24, 25 points a night. The great thing about this team is I don't think they really care who scores, but if you're Zion, you have to be aggressive every single night. You can't take nights off not being aggressive. Like, B.I. could technically take nights off being aggressive. Trey Murphy can, because they have a lot of shooting, a lot of depth, and if someone has the hot hand, this team has, the last couple of years, Jose Alvarado's had a 40-point night, Trey Murphy's had 40-point nights, CJ's had 40-point nights, B.I.'s had 40-point nights, but Zion Williamson has to be aggressive every single game, especially because he's got to be the guy that can draw fouls, get to the line, because you're going to be undermanned physically and size-wise almost every single night. So, but a lot of talent between both teams. I think this is, again, the positioning for both Denver and New Orleans is clearly different. Denver is, we're starting to see who are those guys going to be, and they're going to have a cap space situation where they're going to be able to improve and correct the positions that they need to, receiving room, tight end. New Orleans, this is probably as talented as you're ever going to be around Zion Williamson. So it's Zion's time to please take that leap. If you are that guy, this is when you do it. This is HardFoul Radio. We will come back with our closing statement. And we are back to close it out today. I was trying to think of how to really approach this conversation because I think some of it's unfair and I don't want to be hyperbole in the moment and just try to say something to get clicks, views, etc. But I do genuinely feel like the NFL right now has a problem. I talked about this a little bit with Tony earlier in the show, where I feel like the NFL has a problem with how good is the actual product on the field. Like, if we break down, and I'm a Kansas City hater, but if we break down the quality of play of what they've played like, but they're still 6-0, is that really reflective of them, or is that reflective on the league? I thought about, and I've been a huge CJ Stroud fan the past couple years. Anyone who's ever listened to me knows I am a big CJ Stroud guy. But CJ and the Houston Texans offense, just to be fair, has struggled. And if you look at the offense with Nico Collins and without, it is drastically different. The Eagles, one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. Just look at the names on that roster. Struggled. The 49ers, look at the names on that roster. Struggled. The Minnesota Vikings, which we consider a coaching job, that's one of the few teams that's played great pretty much start to finish. I understand they came off their first loss against the Lions. But again, we consider that a coaching job. How many teams, Tony said this earlier, he feels like there's no dominant team. The Lions aren't dominant, the Ravens aren't dominant, because the Ravens, both the Ravens and Lions, who have probably played the best start to finish this year, well, both of them have defensive issues. Both of them either have injuries, declining players. The defense just is not up to par for what they are used to or for what we would consider a dominant team. Again, Kansas City 6-0. Mahomes has 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Has not played well. There is no, this is a part of why the NFL is where it is, and it's why its popularity is so incredibly powerful, is that teams can be playing bad. The defending 2-time Super Bowl champion, the dynasty in the league, can be playing bad, and they're 6-0. The Detroit Lions can have a bad defense, and they're 5-1. The Ravens can be this dominant running attack, setting records with how well they're running the football. Defense isn't good. Are we just at a point where these teams that are playing, are just not, we just don't have anyone that is really dominant, really good. And yet football numbers, and maybe this is just a thing, we're just so desperate for football that even when the product is less than stellar, we watch. We don't do that with baseball. We don't do that with basketball. Any other sport, despite how popular there are, their product has to match the popularity to some degree. Again, CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans, one of the stories heading into the season, not playing that great. Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love leads the league in interceptions. Yes, he's stolen touchdown passes too, but he's leading the league in picks. The Vikings are a coaching story. There's a lot of teams right now that just are not playing well, and yet we still continue to go watch. I think about this with the Broncos. Are the Broncos actually better, or is the league as a whole just down? Who's the quarterback that we're looking at? Besides, Lamar's the guy who we're looking at right now and saying, oh yeah, he's the MVP. He's the guy that's killing it. And a lot of you think he's still more of a runner or a running back than an actual quarterback. Josh Allen, we just apparently don't give credit to anymore. He has no interceptions, all these touchdowns, and we're like, the Bills still feel like they're struggling. The Bills still don't quite feel like they're there. Who are the great teams in the NFL? Even in the NBA, which say what you want for all its issues. The Celtics are a great team. Right now, they're killing in the first half against the Knicks. In baseball, the Dodgers were a great team. The Yankees were a great team. I don't even like saying that. There's these other teams that were great teams. They put product and substance. It wasn't just sizzle. It was actual steak. It was real meat. It was real playing. The NFL, there is far more teams underperforming. I'm just talking about bad teams. Bad teams are easy to explain. The Raiders are a bad team. The Jets are a bad team. But there are teams truly just underperforming, even if they're winning and putting out a low-quality football product. The Chiefs are putting out a low-quality football product. The Texans are putting out a low-quality football product. These teams, again, are we just so obsessed with the NFL and football that we don't care how bad the actual product on the field is? Hey, man, this is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Tomorrow we are joined by Will and a new guest we're going to bring on for the first time. Excited for that. This is HardFoul Radio.